We moved a lot. Every time we moved, it was a new crowd, and I was little, and I was, quote, fresh meat every time I hit a new school because I was a new kid in town. Let's pick on him a while. I grew up slopping hogs and chopping cotton and doing the things that you would do in rural America at that time, and no one around was wealthy. No one around had any money. We were rich in family, but not with stuff.
We moved every 2 to 3 years depending on his assignment. If you haven't lived in the military, it might seem very strange about these moves, but to me, it became very routine, except for my senior year when halfway through my senior year, we had to go back to the States. And the class trip was to Rome, Italy. I was very unhappy about that.
Poor Carol.
Should I shed a tear here?
I had a shoe shine stand, the 3 chairs, next to Spec Hardware.
In Livingston?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Then everybody had leather shoes. When I started to Cumberland, I had a cigar box full of money.
Now, can you still shine a shoe?
I can, and milk a cow too.
When you came to the school the first month, they asked you what your plans for graduation were. And it had a little bitty line about 1 inch long. And I put down law because it fit in the space and I knew how to spell it.
I planned to be an experimental psychologist. Started wondering if that was really what I wanted to do. So I sort of looked around and applied for other things. There was a very good paralegal school in Philadelphia. I interviewed for what was then Pan Am Airways. So I was going to be a flight attendant there. I applied to get my teaching certificate in Pennsylvania. I applied to French graduate school, and I applied to one law school, Duquesne University School of Law.
What motivated you to apply to law school?
It was just sort of casting a wide net, trying to figure out what to do next.
I thought being a lawyer would be a way to be independent. Then I found a sort of Rhodes Scholarship for lawyers called the Root Tilden Scholarship at New York University Law School. My father was very upset. He thought he could not understand why a son of his would go to New York University Law School.
My last year of teaching, and I went to some of the school board meetings, and there was a woman lawyer there at some point. I thought, wow, here's a woman lawyer doing this. And I thought, gee, maybe I could be a lawyer and I could specialize in representing teachers. That would be pretty cool to do. I had no idea if I was smart enough to go to law school, if I would like it, if there was a career for me in it. I just, for lack of anything better to do, that's what I decided to do, was to start law school.
I bought an Underwood typewriter, an old one for $10, while I was in law school, after I had gotten my license to practice. And I began doing collections down in Roane County. And I would type letters, and I was so proud that there were not letterhead paper, but I'd put at the bottom, J. Polk Cooley, attorney at law. Oh, that was nice. And I would write stiff collection letters to people. That typewriter, if you typed an O, it just made a hole in the paper. That was the O.
I remember one particular day, pretty early in the start of the practice, that I was going to try a jury case with Judge Seth Norman when he was a practicing attorney. He made the opening statements to the jury, had the jury seated, and I was sitting there with the counsel table, and he turned around to me as he sat down and said, "I'm leaving. You handle it." And so there I was, 2 days out of passing the bar exam with a jury case on my hand. But fortunately, we muddled through that, and I can't even remember what happened, but I know it wasn't bad because it didn't stick in my mind as a situation that was memorable.
Bob came to my office one day as he was leaving as a throwaway. He said, well, Howard and I are trying to find somebody for our office in Huntsville. Would you be interested in that? And I said, well, yeah, I might be interested in that. Next day or two, he took me to meet Howard Baker. And Howard Baker had the capacity to talk people into doing whatever he wanted them to do. And he certainly talked me into saying yes to that opportunity. And that's when what became my career really started.
Do you recall what your starting salary was when you began with Baker Worthington?
$500 a month, which was a substantial increase over what I made in Knoxville.
I represented my first military client along with Claiborne Peoples, and they had a break-in at the CID, that's Criminal Investigation Division. Those were the police and the military, and these guys had been caught with their marijuana, and they were mad, and they broke into the CID evidence room to steal it back. And they got caught, and they needed an extra lawyer. Claiborne was representing one of them, and I was representing the other one. And I think we got them off on stupidity, that defense.
The Blanton case, as you've described, was a big case in terms of publicity.
It did immeasurable things for my career because there was still a perception among many lawyers, male lawyers, and certainly clients of male lawyers that women were not tough enough to do litigation. It kind of smashed that myth. I just can't overestimate the value at that time as a woman of doing that case that was so visible to the community. And I hope it helped other women that were trying to do litigation at that time.
When I ran in 81 to get a position in 82, that's when Muriel Robinson and Barbara Haynes threw their hats in the ring too. Barbara ran for General Sessions and got elected, and Muriel got elected to the Fourth Circuit. That was monumental. Talk about someone who had to be a holder of the banner for women. Muriel Robinson did it with a lot of gusto and panache.
When I went on the court in 1996, so we had the Lawyers Fund for Client Protection that protected the public when somebody did something, a lawyer did something that was adverse to a client. But we didn't have the other piece of that puzzle, which was helping that lawyer who may have taken money or done something inappropriate because they had either a mental problem or a problem with substance. So it was my mission to start a statewide program in Tennessee. The other justices sort of listened to me, but not a whole lot. And we went on a retreat, and I encouraged them to listen to somebody from out of state who came to our retreat and explained to the other four justices how the program worked, why it was essential that we have one statewide. And to their credit, by the time that he left, the consensus was, how fast can we get this done?
I'd been on the bench for about 3 months, and I was listening to this plaintiff testify. I take copious notes, and I was writing. I was thinking, man, what a story, writing and writing. And then the defendant got up there, and it was as equally compelling. I was thinking, wow, I wonder who's going to win. And then I realized I had to decide who was going to win. I had read everything. I knew what the lawsuit was about, but you have to hear the testimony and you have to listen to all of the evidence, because lawyers have a way of crafting their memorandums to get the outcome that they want. And judges can also craft decisions to have it come out the way they want. I like to think that when I was working on a decision, that I had brought that same attitude. Who's going to win to find the right answer? And if I failed, it wasn't because I had pre-decided. I decided it based on what I knew and what I thought my instructions were, not in the handbook on how to be a judge, but on my whole legal training.
When I first went on the bench, Mr. Norman Sr. told me, daughter, rule from the bench. That way everybody knows that nobody got to you in the back room.
How many times have you been married?
5. I think I devoted too much time to the law, and maybe I didn't devote enough time to my marriages.
What time would you go in the mornings?
Say 8 o'clock.
So about 8 to 5,
right.
Monday through Saturday.
Right.
Did you ever work on Sundays as well?
I did alone. I didn't take clients, but I went to the office often. I still remembered old Judge Jones. The law is a jealous mistress. And he was so right.
Mm-hmm.
I just encourage people that are going to law school to be sure they want to do that and strive to do the best they can once they get there, because it is very competitive.
In law school, I learned to separate the essence from a mass of stuff and to write a clear, declarative sentence to persuade and say what I am trying to say. I found that the most useful skills that I have, both as governor and as United States Senator.
You can do a lot of different things under the auspices of being a lawyer. Tried lawsuits in a country courthouse, regulatory work before federal agencies. I've negotiated with foreign governments and managed lawsuits. My territory for American Motors was south of the Ohio River and east of the Mississippi. I mean, it was a big area. I've done a lot of business work, and all of that's part of being a lawyer.
Don't go to court looking like a mass wrinkle. You know, go to court looking like you know what you're doing. And, you know, appearances are everything. If you put your best foot forward, you're going to impress the judge. And if you're prepared, he's going to be so happy, or she's going to be so happy.
My mother's family are staunch Republicans from East Tennessee. My aunt only voted for one Democrat in her life, and she had to pray about that. And I was that Democrat. I watched Oni Nafee, Jimmy Nafee's father. He said one time, the only thing I know about politics is everybody ought to have a job. And everybody ought to have enough to eat. Growing up the way I grew up, that meant a lot to me. And so it just happened that Democrats were there.
How long had you been a Republican at that point?
Well, I'd been in the Army, and I wasn't anything. I voted for Jimmy Carter for president because he was a Southerner.
I represented a woman in a very contentious lawsuit. She called me Mullard. I didn't really like that. She always said, well, Mullard, this is an absolute true story. I was coming out of the courthouse one day and wasn't in a good mood, and she was walking along with me, going back to the office. Now, Mullard, what are we going to do? I told what her husband done to her. What are we going to do about it? What would you do about it? And I said, I guess I'd shoot the son of a bitch. And I went on. I thought nothing about it. And the next morning or the following morning, she sat on my steps. I said, Beauty, you're out mighty early or something. She said, well, I did what you said I should do. And after she had left me, she went straight to Spec Hardware. Unfortunately, bought a small gun, a little .32 caliber, and went home and promptly shot him 2 or 3 times in the middle, but it didn't kill him. We finally got her off on a battered wife syndrome, and then we fussed over the farm, and it went to the Court of Appeals. It's a reported case. And we went through those trials, and it never came out
Oh, it never came out that you told her.
No, hell no. No, no. Of course not. But can you imagine that coming out in court? One said, well, I shot my husband. Well, my lawyer told me to. And
Governor Sundquist appointed me to the UT board, and that proved to be one of the most enjoyable and fulfilling projects I've taken on, other than the practice of law. The university is a group of highly intelligent and capable people. They were fun to work with, and I was vice chair on 2 different occasions, and had a real opportunity to work with the leadership of the university in all those capacities. And I was there 12 years, and I think things were considerably better when we left than when we got there.
I taught at the College of Trial Advocacy at University of Tennessee. I've done seminars all over the place. Taught at Dyersburg State for a while.
Why? Why do you do that?
Because they needed somebody.
Aren't you teaching your competitors?
That's okay. I do that all the time. That's the greatest joy of the people that I mentioned earlier, practicing law, is to watch them become really good at their craft.
You've been an entrepreneur for years in addition to being a lawyer.
yeah, I got tired of the law practice a little bit.
How'd you get in the radio business?
An engineer owed me some money for a legal fee, and he said, I've got a radio license, and he assigned it to me.
You listen to these radio stations?
I wouldn't know a transponder from a receiver, you know.
My main interest has always been, or the last 29 years or so, has been karate and training pretty much every day. It's a very good thing for you physically, but it's also a very good thing for your concentration and your focus.
I tried golf for a few years, and I wasn't any good at it. Then I went into farming, and I have enjoyed that immensely. Every Saturday I spend on the farm.
What are you growing?
Cattle farm.
Cattle farm.
I'm not going to be a dirt farmer. That's hard work.
My friends today say to me, I wish my mother had made me keep playing the piano. And my answer is, I don't remember having a choice. And I made a deal with my mother. I'd get up in the morning about 6. I had a couple of newspaper routes. So I'd run my newspaper routes, like at 4 a.m. or 5, and then I'd come back and take a nap, and then I'd get up and practice the piano for 30 minutes, and that was all I had to do. So in the afternoon, I could play football or whatever I wanted to do. Well, I found out I could play by ear, which I didn't think was so special, but not everybody can. It's like repeating what somebody says to you, so I can play what I hear. That gives me a lot of enjoyment.
I'm a swimmer. I swam in college, and
competitively?
In college I did, yeah. And then sort of kept it up whenever I was in a position of being near a pool. And that's my primary recreation. Maureen and I walk a lot. We walk a lot in Knoxville and have done 4 or 5 day village-to-village walks in France for several years.
I do yoga on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and Monday, Wednesday, Friday, I do the weight or strength training. After I do that, I usually go walk in Percy Warner for about an hour.
I cook dinner every night, and I look forward to that. It's a creative enterprise for me. I think ahead of what I'm going to cook and what have I got in the fridge that's going to go bad if I don't cook it tonight, and what will go with it. Byron sits at the bar, and he has his bourbon and Coke, and I have a glass of wine because I love to drink a glass of wine while I'm cooking, and we talk about our day, and I look forward to that every single day.
So how many years have you practiced law?
69 years.
69 years.
I cut out jury work about 5 years ago. It was not without some suggestion from the judges. But it was over time. I cut that out. I try bench cases.
At age 92, when's the last time you filed a lawsuit for a client?
Last week.
Well, I've defined retirement as doing what you like to do and not doing things you don't like to do. And on that scale, I think I am retired.
I expect by this time next year, I will be doing what I want to do on my schedule, not some judge's schedule.
I'm now 73, and you wanted something more than being in the courtroom every day. And I like to go out when I'm pretty much ahead. And at this point, I hadn't made too many people mad, and I could retire respectfully. And, you know, I've missed the people, but I have not missed the work. I just do a different kind of work nowadays.
The county knew it needed a jail. The sheriff wanted a jail, but the commissioners just wouldn't vote for the money to build it. So we filed suit and then did investigation, had photographs, people sleeping on mats in the floor, side by side, 30, 40 people in a room that was supposed to be a day room. He had the photographs at the back of our motion. And I said, Bill, we need to put these in the front on the side of the file that we give the judge. And he said, that's not what you do. It's an attachment. It goes in the back. And it was one of the very few times that I just said, look, I'm telling you what to do. This is what we ought to do. Clerk hands the judge our file. And the other side starts, I think some big Knoxville lawyer firm was handling it. Other side started saying, we know we need improvements. We're looking for ways to make things better, but we don't think it rises to a position of being unconstitutional. And Judge Taylor interrupts him. The little man sort of looks up over his glasses and says, Counselor, I've seen pictures of your jail. It may be constitutional in Turkey, but it's not going to be constitutional in Tennessee. If I were you, I'd sit down with these boys and figure out a way to get out of this case. The front page story on the News Sentinel the next day was the picture of the 30 people sleeping in this day room with a headline, Judge says jail might be constitutional in Turkey, but not in Tennessee.